Okay, now make sure you take him up top side. Actually, you probably have to take him upstairs. I know they don't like the demons upstairs, but this is serious. You have to take him upstairs to Apollo, okay? And make sure he gets sunlight while you're doing that in case they get septic, all right? All right, good, go, quickly. Hello? Hello? Well, I have been having such trouble with the Milwaukee family players. You would not believe it. You would not believe the trouble I've been having with them. I have just had to send one of my demons up top side, or actually even further upstairs, which I know they don't like, because it got bitten. This is one of my favorite demons. He's the one who I have be the director for them. He's a demon of thousands of years of good standing. And they bit him. I mean, honestly, when I find out who has been giving the Milwaukee family players blood, guts for garters. Honestly, he will rot on the mountainside like Mortimer. I do not know. I mean, they're my demons. I'm the boss. I can scream and yell at them all I want, not the inmates. I am not happy with the Milwaukee family players. They are very, very bad. I don't know who gave them blood, because if they weren't given blood, they wouldn't have been corporeal enough to bite one of the demons. Oh, they have been so stroppy lately. Just stroppy. Anyway, we'll get to that. But I'm here with a new play, and we're also here to promote a book about Shakespeare. So I don't mind doing that. So this book behind me somewhere, I don't know. I'm not holding it. I've got nails. I'm not holding nothing. Anyway, it's available. It's all about Shakespeare. Right, so our play this week. We're actually going to be doing 3 weeks of plays, all in a row. So there you go. You're going to get sick of the sight of me. No, you won't, because you love me. Anyway, you better love me. Anyway, what I was saying, Milwaukee family players have been worse than usual. So they bit their director. I know. I mean, seriously, what sort of monsters are they? Oh, I know exactly what kind of monsters they are. They bit their director. Anyway, so after they bit the director, we had to work out another solution. And because they were complaining about the play, because the play that we are doing is Henry VI, part 1, and then we're going to do 2 and 3 over the course of the rest of the month. Yes. It's like in the old days when I used to do lots of them all together, and that's how we've run out of plays. That's how we've ended up doing the Henry VI plays. Anyway, Henry VI part 1 was one of the plays that was actually already down here. I had the name Shakespeare attached, and for a very long time we thought Shakespeare was this terrible playwright who only wrote one cruddy little play, and then the Milwaukee family players turned up and there were all these really good plays. But for a long time we thought that was the only play he wrote. Turns out he didn't write most of it. The good bits, the little tiny good bits, they're Shakespeare. The rest of it, not quite certain, but we're pretty sure that Kit Marlowe, who's down here as well, had something to do with it. Kit Marlowe's down here rather than upstairs because Kit Marlowe didn't believe in gods. Now he's got more gods than he knows what to do with. The new management upstairs didn't really like the not believing in the gods thing. That was one of the things that they send them down here for. But anyway, he's got more gods than he knows what to do with now. So, says Kit Marlowe is responsible for most of this mess, or at least I'm going to blame him for most of this mess. He can work with the Milwaukee family players. I just gave him the usual stuff. Don't look them in the eye, don't tell them anything personal, and don't stand anywhere near where they can grab you. You know, the usual stuff with the Milwaukee family plays, especially since they seem to be a bit corporeal at the moment. This is very disturbing. Very disturbing. I'm not even going to kill the person who gave them blood. I'm going to tie them to a mountaintop like Prometheus. You don't give things like that. Ugh, yuck. But unfortunately, he hasn't had any blood, so he should be fairly insubstantial. So they shouldn't have been able to bite him. He's not happy, but I said, Kit, look where you are. Look where you are, Kit. It's going to be like this. So anyway, Henry VI, Part 1 is, like every prequel ever written, not great. Not great at all. Prequels and sequels. We have a lot of them down here. Prequels that nobody asked for, prequels that somebody thought was a good idea at the time. Turns out it's never a good idea to do a prequel. We have so many sequels. Oh, do you know how many Jaws movies we have down here? And Halloween and Freddy and, oh my goodness, so many. So many other plays. So many plays. Like, I mean, you keep complaining all the Elizabethan plays are lost. You're not missing anything. They're all down here. We stick them in the furnace. So many of them. Anyway, this is the prequel nobody asked for. Nobody asked for this prequel. This is Henry VI, Part 1. And in Henry VI, Part 1, we learn Hal's dead. Oh, I like Hal. Henry V is dead. And Shakespeare hasn't yet written the Henriade plays, so we've got those to look forward to at least. But Hal is dead. And his brothers are buttheads. They're squabbling. His son is too young to take the throne, and so his uncle, one of Hal's brothers, is Lord Protector. And he is squabbling. Most of the lords are squabbling. There isn't any central power. You know, it's exactly what his grandfather was complaining about. You know, exactly what his grandfather would have said would be a big problem. Oh, Bolingbroke. But anyway, so there is contention in the English court. And because there is contention in the English court, the French have been taking great advantage of the fact that there isn't a central power figure, and they have been taking back French cities that Henry won. They're not happy. This isn't good. This galvanizes the English lords into, oh, well, maybe we ought to quit squabbling and get to defending our conquests in France, or we won't have any conquests in France. Yeah, kind of important, I guess. You know, you want to at least make sure your king has his legacy that his father spent so long fighting for. But so they are told Talbot is defending Orléans. In France, the Dauphin, who we met him in Henry V, but that hasn't been written yet. Yeah, this is a little bit confusing in certain ways. The Henriade plays are much better. The Dauphin, Charles, is fighting to get his crown back from Henry VI. The Dauphin, remember, is the son of the King of France, who's now dead, and thus Henry VI got his throne. And he is fighting in Orléans, and someone brings a message that this woman has come and she is going to defend them, because this is a trope that is very popular at this time, the virago. The virago. So remember Catherine from Taming of the Shrew? This is her grown-up, scary big sister, the virago. So Joan of Arc is a virago. We have a better virago in the next two plays. But in this play, Joan of Arc is the virago, because we don't get the next two plays virago till the very end. But anyway, jumping ahead of myself. And she says that she has been given a message by God or the Virgin to defend France, and she is going to help Charles, the Dauphin, take Orléans, because they have been laying siege to the city of Orléans, and they have been considering leaving the siege off, but Joan of Arc persuades them, no, I'm going to, I will capture Orléans for you. And the French Dauphin is immediately, woo, woof. And he would like to, but she said, no, not while France is under the rule of the English. No. During the battle for Orléans, Joan of Arc encounters and fights Talbot. Talbot is probably one of the big problems with this play is I have no idea who the lead is. Like, no idea. Absolutely no idea. It is so confused. It has so many different lines running, but is a deeply, deeply unfocused play. But the person who gets the best lines overall is Talbot. I have no idea who we're supposed to exactly be following. Is really difficult play. So, which is not good. Which is why I say it's the prequel nobody asked for. It's unfocused. That's not a good thing. Kit. Anyway, Talbot and Joan of Arc fight, but Joan spares him, and they capture the city of Orléans. After having lost the city, the English then, Talbot and the English mount a sneak attack after the French had been celebrating capturing the city, and they recapture the city. This goes on and on and on for ages. It's like all this space that Shakespeare would have used for actual character development is just fighting over here and fighting over there and fighting over here and fighting over there. And I'm sure it was a lot of stage action, but it's really boring. So once they've gone and it leaves it very unfocused. And once they've gone and conquered Orléans, again, the English, French lady sends message to Talbot saying, oh, I have heard great tidings of Talbot. I'd like to see him. And so the other Englishmen go and say, ooh, go see the French lady. And Talbot goes to see the French lady, but he's not completely stupid, so he does take his guard with him. And when the French lady attempts to capture him, because he had been captured earlier, and it doesn't matter because he gets free anyway repeatedly. It's, like I said, really unfocused. Anyway, the French lady attempts to capture him, but then he turns the table on her by saying, ooh, I have my guards. And, oh, well, that's the end of that. Like, what's the point of that apart to make some dirty jokes? It doesn't advance the plot. It doesn't advance the characters. These are problems. This is a really thin play. This is why we're, yeah. In England, Somerset and Plantagenet, who will become York, so I'm just going to call him York because I don't care, otherwise I'm going to get so confused. Somerset and York have an argument. We don't exactly know what the argument is about, but this is where they pick the white and the red roses. So Somerset and Suffolk and others pick red roses, and York and Warwick and some others pick white roses, which they will then wear over the rest of the course of the play and the next two plays, which is why it's the War of the Roses, because the Lancasters are the red roses and the Yes, the Lancasters are the red roses, that's the king's family, and the Plantagenets, which is York's family, are the white roses. In the meantime, the Archbishop, and I think this happened before the French lady, but I can't 100% tell you because it's just... The Archbishop and the Lord Protector have been having a squabble. The Archbishop won't let the Lord Protector into the tower because he says that he's after weapons to take the throne for himself. So these two needlessly squabble. And in a way that really is like, oh, wow, Shakespeare so didn't write this because it is so anti-Catholic, and Shakespeare never wrote another thing wherein the religious figures were seen as so clearly villains. So that like definitely has Marlowe's little fingerprints all over it. He never ever writes, apart from Romeo and Juliet, where the friar clearly killed those teenagers. But he doesn't do that because he doesn't write him like that because he's a friar. He just needed a villain. But he doesn't actually, in any of the other history plays, although you have bishops in the Henry IV plays conspiring against the king, it's not done because of foreign power interference, which is the inference in this play, and that makes it a very anti-Catholic play, and that's not Shakespeare's style. It just isn't. There's a lot of things in this play where it's like, oh, that's not Shakespeare. That's not Shakespeare. So, anyway, after plucking the flowers, York is called to see Mortimer. May he starve upon the hillside, revolted Mortimer. Yes, revolted Mortimer, who's now a very old man, goes and calls to see York and says, blah, 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 basically the whole of the Henriad, or at least Richard II through to Henry IV Part 2. So he goes and recaps all of that in about 5 minutes flat. Go watch my recaps if you want to know that part of the story. Yeah. And York is now, I want to get my title back. And I have a right to be king. At the very least, I want my title back. So he's gone and made a pissed off man even more pissed off. Wow. Little wonder Henry wanted to leave Mortimer on the mountain to starve. Mortimer's a meddler, a mixer, a king mixer. And then he dies, which at least is good. Henry, we finally meet Henry. He's a bit of a sap. He's about 17, he's a teenage boy, and the Archbishop and Gloucester are coming to blows. Warwick is like, what the hell is going on? Your people are in the streets going to, throw stones at each other, and they're fighting and brawling and fighting and brawling because there's no center. This play has no center. And the king makes them make peace. And now they're all going to go to France so that he can be crowned king. In France, Joan is fighting, uses a trick to get into the city of Rouen and throw the English out of Rouen. And then Talbot goes and gets back into Rouen. So I don't know what the whole point of that was, because it's just everything went back to the status quo. And then after that, Joan convinces Burgundy, the Duke of Burgundy, to fight with the French against the English, because some of the French are still loyal to the English, and so they convince the Duke of Burgundy to fight with the French, with the Dauphin against the English. Henry comes to France for his coronation and is crowned. He gives York back his title of Duke of York and all his lands. Somerset and York's servants are fighting, and York is forced to back down by the king, who supports Somerset by taking a red rose and wearing that. And York is made to be aware that his position is not as powerful as he thinks it is by the king supporting Somerset, which the king does, but I don't think he really understands what he's doing because he is a bit of a twit. Talbot has been given honours at the coronation, and when they hear that the Duke of Burgundy has rebelled against them and joined the Dauphin, Talbot is sent out to fight. Talbot goes out to fight. He fights the French. He has his son with him. And this is one of the actual good bits of this play, because Shakespeare clearly wrote it. You can pick the bits that Shakespeare wrote. There are a couple of things that Shakespeare, across his entire career as a writer, is particularly interested in, and he uses frequently. He's particularly interested in family, and he's particularly interested in politics in these plays. And when you look at the language, there is certain language that he really, really uses over and over again. And one of those is he uses a lot of animal language, and you find a lot of animal language and animal similes in the red and the white roses scene. Then you also find animal language, especially country animal language, talks of deer and hounds and hunting in this scene with Talbot and with his son, where he likens the English to frightened deer, and that they're going to do their best even though they're no longer, like, now that they're in a weakened position against French dogs, whereas previously they had been the hunting dogs. He also has a really moving scene with his son, where both father and son say, "You go, I'll stay," but I'm not going, and I'm not going without you, so I'll stay. And they both fight, and they both die. Yeah, that's actually one of the best bits. Talbot's death, especially when he recounts the deeds of his son and then is given his son's body, is actually one of the best bits in the entire play. And it's very, very Shakespeare. Hear that, Kit? Yeah, you couldn't do that. I read Tamburlaine. You couldn't do that. Anyway. So Talbot is up against it, and neither the Duke of York nor Somerset will send troops. They're both arguing, and York won't send his troops, and he tells the messenger to go to Somerset, and Somerset says, "It's too late for me to send my troops. It'll have to do." And because neither of them are going to do this, Talbot dies. Talbot and the English are killed, and the city is taken. I don't really care which city it is. I don't care. It just is endless battles. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some great battle scenes, but when it's just one after another, the Battle of Shrewsbury makes sense when there's only the Battle of Shrewsbury. You know, the Battle of Agincourt makes sense when it's the big set piece of the play. None of these are the big set piece of the play. I don't know what the big set piece of the play is. I'm going to go Death of Talbot. That's the big set piece of the play for me. That's it. I don't know. This is so unfocused. Anyway, Talbot dies. The French come in, and some of them are disrespectful, but they decide, or want to be disrespectful to Talbot's body, but they give it back to the English. The English are now not in a good position, and they are having to start to broker a peace. The Archbishop is now a cardinal. The Pope is asking for this peace. Blah, 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 blah. There is an offer of marriage for Henry to help broker the peace deal with a French princess, or daughter of an earl or something. He doesn't marry her, so she's not important. We only ever hear of her off stage. The warring continues. The French are continuing to fight. They haven't got there yet. The English capture Joan of Arc. So they actually capture her while she is trying to contact her spirits to guide her in the battle because her spirits are no longer talking to her. This, again, not very Shakespeare. Shakespeare didn't use ghosts very often. He used ghosts, but he didn't use, like, witches very often. There's a witch in Henry VI Part 2, which he didn't call that. There is the witches in Macbeth. There is... Technically, you may call the fairies in whatever fairies are in A Midsummer's Night Dream, but I don't think that's them. And then there is Prospero in The Tempest. Out of the 36 plays, that's 4. This isn't his style. It's clearly not all him. He liked ghosts. Ghosts are fine. You get ghosts all over the place, but not witches. Witches are sort of like a trendy thing at this point, and so, yeah. So anyway, Joan of Arc is taken as a witch by the English, and her spirits don't talk to her anymore anyway, so she's pretty useless for the French. The French are organising this peace. Suffolk is off looking for a wife for the king. He obviously hasn't heard that about the already planned engagement for the king. The king's engaged. The king's reluctant to get engaged. He's a bit of a wet blanket, really. He thinks that he's too young and he should be worried about his studies rather than worried about lascivious things. Like, oh, for a Falstaff to addict him to sack. Are we sure this is Harold's son? Obviously his brothers had quite more to his upbringing. And they were clearly po-faced creatures. Anyway, Suffolk meets Margaret, who is the daughter of the King of Naples, and he's like, whoa. And so Suffolk brokers a deal with Margaret's father, that Margaret's father gets, like, his lands. Just like, can the war go away? I'm old, I'm tired, I don't want to deal with this. You can marry my daughter, just leave my lands in peace. And Suffolk is like, yeah, that's cool. Because he's thinking, I get her married to the king, and then I can rule her. The king through her. Because, like, big chemistry. Big chemistry. Anyway, Joan of Arc is dragged through the streets. Her father goes to say goodbye to her. She denies her father as her father. She attempts to forestall being burned as a witch by saying she's pregnant, and everyone laughs. Oh, ha, 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 it's the Dauphin's child. And boof, there she's burnt as a witch. Suffolk brings Margaret to the English court or has told Henry about Margaret, and Henry is like, whoa, this girl sounds like she's like a bit of woof. All right. And so Henry breaks off his engagement to the other woman, and Suffolk convinces him to marry, after Suffolk has convinced him to marry Margaret. And that's it. That's it. That's the play. I told you the prequel nobody asked for. You'll understand why that is when I do next week's play. So, anyway, that's our play. I know that went through really fast and didn't have the usual sort of detail because the play is really fast, really confusing, and doesn't have a lot of character development. The French are villainous bad guys, and the English are fools and cowards. It's very, no one has an arc. There's no overarching arc. There's no sense of who is your protagonist. I would have wandered off halfway through the play with the death of Talbot if I was in an Elizabethan audience, because that was the only thing I was staying for, and I was only staying for that because I knew that there was the death of Talbot coming. It's a really muddy play. So, anyway, that is Henry VI Part 1. I will bring you, next week, Henry VI Part 2, which I can promise you has no Kit Marlowe meddling in it. It's a much better play. is still unfocused, but is a better play than Henry VI Part 1. So, until then, bye-bye. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.